Hello, gang, and here's a little feedback on free response question 2015 number 1. This was the array processing one. Before we get too far in, just take a look. If you look here on AP Central where they have all of this information, the Student Performance Q&A is an interesting document that you might find helpful. They give information, just a quick summary. What was the intent of the question, so you can get an idea of what they are hoping to ask for, and what were common student errors, so that's pretty good. And also then how well did people perform. In this case, it was a fairly easy question. The average score was 5 out of a possible 9, which is pretty good. You all did great. So, but especially the intent and the common student errors. This one was a question that was working with arrays, and as you know, arrays are going to be question number 1 on the list, either arrays or an array list, but my guess would be both. So let's work through this question just to see. Part A, write a static method array sum that calculates and returns the sum of the entries in a specified array. 2 points for that. One is, did you access all elements of an array with no bounds errors? Second one is, did you return the sum of the elements, initialize, compute, and return? So all 3 of those places. Part B is a 2-dimensional array, so we're not going to look at that one right now. But part C was, is it diverse? Is a 2-dimensional array, does that mean all of the row sums are different? So you had to compute the array of row sums by calling part B, and then do a comparison, and see if there are any duplicates. Good, so let's take a look at what you got. These are testing a couple things, and these are always going to be on here. There's going to be something from here on the free response, pretty much guaranteed. These should all be things that are automatic for you all. Find the sum or the average of an array, and if you're finding an average of integers, be careful that you cast it to return the appropriate double. To count the occurrences of a given value, you would use equals if you're counting integers. You'd use dot equals if you're comparing strings. If you find the minimum or maximum value, find the location of a particular element, find duplicates in the array. And so obviously the first one and the sum or average, the sum and the duplicates are in here. And also insert or remove an item or shift other items up and down. There's also a Java flashcards link that you could go to if you follow this. So here's what basically every one of you wrote for part A. You initialized the sum to 0, you did a for loop, and you did added the sum, added the arrays. This is not a surprise. You all are very good at this. You can handle part A. If you take a look at the College Board response, they did it with a for each loop, which is just a tad simpler, but it doesn't really make any difference one way or the other. If you want to avoid for each loops because there are no multiple choice questions this year, no problem. You can skip it, but all is good. You do the initialization, you do the loop, you do the increment, and then you return the sum. All is good. Yay. Part C was first find the row sums and then see if they are all different. So if they are all different, we're good. So you start out by finding the row sums by calling it on the 2D array. You need a nested loop in order to find whether there are duplicates. Not bad. So this person nested an outer loop and an inner loop going through sums too, and starting the first one at 0, starting the inner loop at I plus 1, which makes a lot of sense. You're all good. One of the modifications that some people did is you had the outer loop going only to length -1, which works also because you're only at the very end, you're only comparing the last 2 items, so you'd compare the second to last to the last. It works if you just go to length, because when j is I plus 1, it will skip this loop altogether. You compare the sums, and if they are the same, then you do have duplicates. It's not diverse, you return false. Otherwise, you return true way outside of all the for loops. Good. Here's a slight variation on this. We have the same beginning. You have k is 0, except for they left off the letter k here. but I think that one's clear, so it would probably be okay because you're running k and you're running k here. And you do I is 1 to length. This is all good. You return false and then else return true, and this is a problem because this one was going to return true right away. It is only going to make one comparison. It's going to compare item 0 to item 1, and if they are the same, it will return false. If they are different, it will return true and not compare any other items. So when you go back to the previous, to the list that would get 0.1 for comparing the sums, it would not get 0.1. It would not get this second point because it's not comparing all and only. It's comparing one pair. It's not comparing all pairs. Makes sense? It would also not get 0.1, this point, because it would return true basically every single time as long as the first two are not the same. So this one would get one of the three. This one would get one of the 3 points there. Be careful where you're returning things. And last version, we're looking at this one. This one looks pretty good up front. You do get the sums. You do have an outer loop that goes to length and an inner loop that starts at k plus 1. There is one issue, and I'm not entirely sure how an AP grader would look at this. They might miss it altogether, but here you're comparing sums I to sums j, which would make sense if you had ever defined I, but you didn't. You're using k and j to control the loops, and so you need to compare k and j here. That's a thing to be careful of. One more possibility that they said was a common student mistake. None of you made this. This is good. But just to be clear, all of you started your outer loop with like a k, with a k is 0, something along those lines. One of them starting at 0 and the other starting at k plus 1, which means that you're never going to look at them themselves. You could have also done j is 0 up to length. But then you would also have to have an if j is not equal to k, or something along those lines, to make sure that you didn't do it. You all did great on these ones. A couple of minor issues, but all the issues were minor. Every single person did nice. Double check the College Board's responses if you like. All is good. Enjoy.